When you think of the Battle of Britain, what comes to mind? It's probably heroic pilots, right? Scrambling to their Spitfires, dogfighting high up in the clouds. And that is absolutely a huge part of the story. But what if I told you the victory wasn't just won in the cockpit? It was actually won in dark rooms by an invisible network, a revolutionary information system that became Britain's real secret weapon. Let's dig into how this incredible network really did turn the tide of the war. Okay, so picture this. It's the summer of 1940, and things are looking bleak. Really bleak. France has just fallen to Germany's blitzkrieg. The British army barely escaped from Dunkirk, but they had to leave almost all of their heavy equipment behind. Britain was completely alone. And this quote just perfectly captures the mood. It felt like the entire nation was about to be swallowed whole. So let's just really set the scene here in what everyone now calls Britain's darkest hour. With the country totally isolated and, frankly, vulnerable, Hitler gave the order to his commanders: get ready for a full-scale invasion. Britain was now target number one. And this plan, it had a name: Operation Sea Lion. They spent 6 frantic weeks putting it all together. And those 6 weeks, as one observer put it, were going to determine the history of 1,000 years. I mean, the stakes just could not have been any higher. But hold on. There was one massive obstacle standing in Germany's way. You see, a successful landing on British beaches was totally impossible unless you first had complete control of the air. Germany's Air Force, the mighty Luftwaffe, had a single job: destroy the Royal Air Force. The stage was officially set for a fight to the death. All right, so that sets the stage for what we now call the Battle of Britain. And the equation was brutally simple. If the RAF was wiped out, Britain was wide open for invasion. If it survived, Britain was safe. But for the RAF, well, the odds looked absolutely grim. Now, when you look at this, you can see right away how lopsided this fight was. The RAF was just coming off the Battle of France with some really heavy losses. They were short on pilots, short on planes. They were badly outnumbered. On the other side, the Luftwaffe had way more aircraft. But they did have a weakness. They were fighting over enemy territory, right at the edge of their fuel range. That meant they only had a very short amount of time to actually fight before they had to turn back. So this was it. This was the one question that mattered for the RAF. How do you possibly win when you're outnumbered? You can't just send planes up into the sky hoping to bump into the enemy. That's a total waste of precious fuel, and it wears out your pilots. To have any chance of survival, they had to be efficient. They had to make sure that every single fighter they sent up actually met the enemy. No wasted sorties, period. Luckily, and this is where the story gets really interesting, there was one man who had been thinking about this exact problem for years: the head of RAF Fighter Command, Air Chief Marshal Sir Hugh Dowding. He was the quiet architect of this whole victory, and his greatest weapon wasn't a plane. It was a system. And here's what made Dowding so brilliant. He had this incredible light bulb moment. He realized he could take the brand new cutting-edge technology of radar and combine it with an old-fashioned idea from World War I: human observers on the ground. He decided he would build a network, a system that could see the enemy coming from miles away and then guide his small number of fighters to the exact right place at the exact right time. Okay, so how on earth did this thing actually work? How do you turn raw information into a weapon that can win a battle? Well, it all came down to 2 key streams of data, flowing together into one central hub. The first and most famous part was called chain home. You've probably seen pictures of these giant lattice towers along the coast. This was Britain's pioneering radar network. It could spot German raids pretty much the moment they took off from France. This early warning was a huge advantage, giving the RAF precious, life-saving minutes to get ready. But here's the thing. That early radar couldn't really see inland. So once the German planes crossed the coast, the system switched to its second data stream: the eyes and ears of the observer corps. And these were just volunteers, men and women with binoculars and basic instruments, standing in fields, visually tracking the raids and phoning in every detail: their height, how many there were, and which way they were headed. And this is where it all comes together. It's like a production line for intelligence. First, the radar detects the incoming raid. Then, as they cross the coast, the observers start tracking them visually. All of this data, from both sources, floods into a central filter room. This was the brain. Here, women of the WAF would sift through all the different, sometimes conflicting reports and turn them into a single reliable track on a giant map table. And finally, that one essential piece of information was sent to the sector airfields, which would then scramble the exact number of squadrons needed to intercept. It was a seamless flow from detection to interception. Now, the effect of this amazing system was made even bigger by a massive German intelligence failure. German High Command just kept underestimating how many planes the RAF had. They were constantly convinced that the RAF was on its last legs, about to collapse any day. It actually led to this dark running joke among German pilots who, raid after raid, kept getting told they were just facing Britain's last 50 Spitfires. And that's the punchline, right? The joke was on them. The doubting system was so incredibly efficient at putting fighters exactly where they needed to be that it created the illusion of a much larger air force. The RAF wasn't everywhere, but to the German pilots who are met by determined opposition on every single raid, it sure felt like they were. The system completely stole the element of surprise. So you can see how this relentless efficiency led right to the battle's climax, and it secured a victory that honestly shaped the rest of the Second World War. The breaking point, the day it all came to a head, was September 15, 1940. It's now known as Battle of Britain Day. The Luftwaffe threw everything they had at Britain, launching its largest, most concentrated attack yet. We're talking 1,500 aircraft sent to fight in the skies over London. But even against that massive attack, the doubting system held. The RAF fought them off, inflicting such heavy losses that the Germans were stunned. And look how quickly things changed after that. Just 2 days later, Hitler realized an invasion was now impossible. He postponed Operation Sea Lion indefinitely. The air war wasn't over. It just shifted to the terrifying night raids of the Blitz. But the threat of invasion was gone for good. And this is the ultimate legacy. This is why it matters so much. Winning the Battle of Britain didn't end the war, not by a long shot, but it made the final victory possible. By preventing an invasion, Britain was secured. It became what they called the unsinkable aircraft carrier, the very place from which, 4 years later, the Allies would launch the D-Day invasion and begin the liberation of Europe. And that really leaves us with a final, fascinating thought. The pilots were unbelievably brave, and their planes were absolute masterpieces of engineering. But without that system guiding them, without that crucial information, all of their courage, all of their effort, it could have easily been for nothing. It just goes to show you, in modern war, the side that can see the battlefield most clearly, well, that's the side that often holds the ultimate advantage.